Greetings everyone and welcome to Back to Ashes. My name is Phoenix. Thank you to the elite members of the channel. I appreciate your dedication and support. It does not go unnoticed and I have no more words to describe it, but thank you. With all of that being said, it is time to go back to ashes. For once we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, brighter, stronger, and a happier person every day. Sit back, relax, kick back, grab a snack or tuck in and get warm. And prepare for your dose of vocal melatonin entitled A True Disturbing Assortment. Right after this intro, there will be an ad. I'll read the first story, there will be an ad. And after that, there will be no more ads within this video. The air in Savannah, Georgia always carried a weight, thick with history and whispers of the unseen. I'd been in this city many times, drawn to its cobblestone streets and moss-draped oaks, where the veil between the living and the dead felt paper thin. As a medium and an artist of the macabre, I thrived in its shadows, venting my spooky art at a paranormal-themed convention. The event was small, a gathering of like-minded souls, ghost hunters, psychics, and enthusiasts who reveled in the eerie. I was in my element, surrounded by people who understood the thrill of the unknown, sharing stories of Savannah's haunted corners over cheap coffee and flickering candlelight. But nothing could have prepared me for the house. That damned house. The convention had buzzed with excitement over a rare opportunity. Access to investigate the house featured in A Savannah Haunting, a film so poorly received it was more likely to bore you than scare you. The movie wasn't cursed, just bad. But the house it was filmed in? That was something else entirely. It stood on the outskirts of the city, far from the charm of Savannah's historic district, where the hum of the highway faded into an unnatural silence. The property was owned by William McCullen, the filmmaker himself, a man whose eyes seemed to carry secrets he'd rather not share. He'd reluctantly agreed to let our group investigate, and my family, my paranormal team, joined me, eager to explore a place we'd never set foot in before. Why not? We'd said, laughing, oblivious to the abyss we were about to step into. I've always been a magnet for the inhuman. Shadow people have trailed me since my teens, their featureless forms lurking in my peripheral vision. My mentors warned me early on that my sensitivity made me a beacon for things that weren't human. Entities that fed on fear, despair, or worse. I'd seen plenty to unsettle most people. Disembodied voices, cold spots that made your breath catch, and once, a figure so distorted it seemed to bend reality itself. But I'd grown used to it, hardened my mind against the things that slithered in the dark. Or so I thought. That house, though, it was different. In the words of Lorraine Warren, it was as close to hell as I ever want to get. The house loomed at the end of a long, winding driveway, flanked by ancient trees that seemed to lean inward, as if guarding a secret. It was a hulking two-story structure from a basement that seemed to swallow light. From the outside, it looked deceptively ordinary, but there was a wrongness to it, a subtle distortion, like the air itself was warped. The windows stared down like empty eyes, and the silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves that sounded too much like whispers. Inside, the house felt impossibly vast, its rooms stretching into shadows that didn't align with the architecture. A grand staircase rose to the right of the main room, its open, backless steps inviting the imagination to conjure hands reaching through the clutch at your ankles as you climbed. William McCullen greeted us with a strained smile, his voice low as he shared the house's history. He spoke of a cleansing years ago, a ritual to banish the negative energy that clung to the walls. Kindly folks had even erected a spiritual barrier to keep the darkness out. But then, a group of rogue investigators had performed an unsanctioned seance, tearing open a door to something new, something malevolent. McCullen's eyes darted nervously as he spoke, his hands trembling slightly. I wondered why he still lived there, why he allowed strangers like us to poke at the wounds of this place. Looking back, I think he was desperate, maybe for answers, maybe for someone to believe him, or maybe something else was pulling his strings. The investigation began innocently enough. My family and I split up, armed with EMF meters, voice recorders, and our own instincts. The air was heavy, but I had felt heavier. I moved through the main room, my boots echoing on the hardwood floor, and climbed the staircase to the second floor. The atmosphere was quiet, too quiet, like the house was holding its breath. I brushed it off, chatting with my team, joking about the cliché of haunted houses. But then, without warning, the air changed. It thickened, pressing against my chest, and a wave of unease washed over me. The others felt it too. My family, usually so close-knit, began to snap at each other, their voices harsh and laced with an anger that wasn't theirs. I felt it in my gut, a sick, twisting dread, like a pit opening inside me. I've always hated conflict. It churns my stomach, makes me focus on my breathing, stay grounded. But this was different. This was wrong. I don't remember descending the stairs. My body moved, but it wasn't entirely me. Exhaustion hit me like a tidal wave, threatening to drag me under. I fought to stay conscious, my vision blurring as I stumbled into the main room. The lead investigator had started an EVP session, and the others were distracted, their voices a distant hum. I couldn't stand anymore. My legs buckled, and I sank to the floor, the cold wood biting into my palms. And then it came. Thoughts that weren't mine flooded my mind. Dark, vicious, and unrelenting. They whispered of despair, of ending it all, of taking others with me. Images flashed behind my eyes, blood, screams, the faces of my family twisted in agony. The thoughts told me I was worthless, that the world would be better without me, that I should just let go. I tried to fight, to scream, to move, but my body was leaden. My voice trapped in my throat. It felt like hours, though it could only have been minutes. The room spun, and the shadows seemed to pulse, growing darker, heavier, as if the house itself was feeding on me. A voice broke through, sharp, urgent. The lead investigator was saying something, his words muffled but enough to pull me back. I managed to croak, "I'm not okay." A woman I hadn't seen before, quiet and unassuming, rushed to my side. Her eyes met mine, and I saw it. She was like me, a medium, her aurora crackling with the same sensitivity. She grabbed my hand, her hand grounding mine, and began a blessing, her words a low, fervent chant. The darkness receded, but not before I saw it. To my left, hunched under the ceiling, was the thing that shouldn't exist. It was too tall, its charcoal black skin stretched over an impossibly thin frame, its legs bent at unnatural angles, like a spider's, and its arms dangled, elongated and wrong. Horns curved from its head, grazing the ceiling, and its eyes, God, those eyes, burned with a malevolent intelligence, glowing a sickly yellow that pierced right through me. It moved in a flash, skittering across the wall like an insect, its limbs twitching in ways that defied bone and muscle. I froze, my breath caught in my chest, but the woman saw it too. Her grip on my hand tightened, her blessing growing louder, and the thing vanished into the shadows. I thought it was over, but the house wasn't done with us. My mother, who'd been on the second-floor balcony overlooking the main room, later told me her own horror. Time had frozen for her, the world stalling as she watched us below. She saw me collapse, saw the air shimmer with something she couldn't name. When I spoke, time snapped back, and she was at my side in an instant. But the thing, it wasn't finished. It had leapt from me to her, its presence clawing at her mind, whispering the same dark promises. The woman who'd helped me performed another blessing, her voice trembling but resolute, and the entity retreated. We didn't stay long after that. We gathered our things, our faces pale, and fled that cursed place. I can't explain what happened, not fully. That thing wanted me, whether to possess me, to break me, or to hitch a ride out of that house. I'll never know. But it's not gone. I've been back to Savannah since, drawn to its haunted streets despite myself. And every time, I feel it watching. In dark alleys, behind the flicker of streetlights, I catch glimpses of those piercing yellow eyes. They follow me, waiting, patient as death itself. The house still stands, and whatever lives there is biding its time. I know it's not done with me, and deep down, I fear it never will be. It began in the autumn of 2019, when the air in the medium-sized town in France's eastern edge carried a chill that seemed to seep into my bones. I was 18, a lanky boy with a restless mind, freshly enrolled in a rare degree program at a local university. The course was so niche that only 10 of us were studying it that year. A small group thrown together in a crucible of ideas and ambitions. Among them, I found Antoine and Karim, two boys who began my anchors in this unfamiliar place. Antoine, a year older, carried himself with a quiet intensity, his eyes sharp with a hunger for something beyond the mundane. Karim, older still, was warm but guarded, his laugh masking a depth I couldn't quite read. Within weeks, we were inseparable, our conversations sprawling across philosophy, dreams, and the edges of the unknown. We felt like brothers, bound by a reckless curiosity that would soon unravel everything. The subject of the paranormal crept into our talks like a shadow slipping through a cracked door. I'd been raised in an atheist household, but I was no stranger to the questions about the unseen. My fascination with spiritualism wasn't brief. It was a compulsion, a need to probe the dark corners of existence. Antoine, though, was different. He spoke of shamanism and New Age practices with a fervor that bordered on obsession, claiming insights that made him seem older than his years. Kareem, ever the skeptic, humored him but shared my curiosity. When Antoine's birthday approached, Kareem gifted him a Ouija board, a slab of polished woods, etched with letters, and a promise of answers. It was a jest, or so I thought, a playful nod to our late-night debates. But the moment I saw it, something in me tightened, a warning I ignored. That night, we gathered at Antoine's cramped apartment, the air thick with the scent of melting wax. We turned off the lights, shuttered the windows, and lit candles that cast flickering shadows across the walls. The board sat between us, its surface gleaming faintly in the dim glow. I know the horror movie tropes: spirits summoned, Liz upended, but I told myself it was nonsense, just a game. We placed our fingers on the planchette, and I felt a prickle of unease, like static crawling up my arms. Kareem took the lead, his voice steady as he asked, "Is anyone there?" Silence hung, heavy, broken only by the faint drip of wax. Then, the planchette twitched. I froze, my breath catching. It moved again, slow at first, then with purpose, sliding to Y-E-S. Antoine's eyes glinted, and Kareem's voice wavered as he asked, "Who are you?" The board spelled out a name, letter by letter, too deliberate to be chance. I told myself it was the ideomotor effect, our subconscious gliding the planchette. But doubt gnawed at me. Kareem, sensing my skepticism, suggested I ask a question only I could know. My mouth went dry. The thought of my grandfather, dead 2 years, his name a secret I'd never shared with them. "I want to speak to someone from my family," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The planchette lurched, spelling out his name, Jaqueus. My blood turned to solid ice. I'd never mentioned him, not once. I tested it, asking questions only I could answer. His favorite song, the watch he always wore. The board answered correctly, each letter a hammer blow to my rationality. Antoine's face was unreadable, and Kareem's eyes were wide with something like fear. We ended the session abruptly, the air too heavy, my body drained as if I'd run a marathon. I stumbled home and collapsed into a dreamless sleep, the kind that felt like falling into a void. We tried the board again, unable to resist its pull, but each session grew darker. The answers became cryptic, mocking, laced with a malice that made my skin crawl. WHYAREYOUHERE. Or, "Why are you here?" Kareem once asked, and the board spat back, TOWATCH. My skepticism eroded, replaced by a creeping certainty that we'd invited something into our lives. Things began to unravel. After one session, a crushing pain gripped my chest, so intense I nearly vomited, my vision swimming with black dots. I grew irritable, snapping at Antoine and Kareem over nothing. Kareem later confessed I'd spoken to him in class with such venom he'd been shaken. but I had no memory of it. My moods swung wildly, a storm raging inside me, and those closest to me noticed. "What's wrong with you?" they'd ask, their eyes wary, as if I were a stranger. The disturbances weren't just internal. During a session at my flat, Kareem, emboldened or reckless, demanded a physical sign. The room grew darker, the candles flickering as if caught in the draft. Then, from the wall behind us, a wall with no neighbors beyond it, came 3 sharp bangs, loud enough to make my heart lurch. We stared at each other, pale and silent. Another time, the board answered a forgotten question with a single word: DEATH. As the last letter formed, the candle on the table snuffed out, only to flare back to life moments later, its flame unnaturally bright. Kareem, ever the documentarian, filmed these sessions. His phone captured the board, the candles, the fear in our eyes. I don't speak to him anymore, but I know these videos exist somewhere, a record of our descent. The strangeness followed me home. Shadows darted at the edges of my vision, fleeting shapes that vanished when I turned. I'd seen them as a child, quick, dark forms slipping between hedges. But now, they were constant, lurking in my flat's corners, especially in the early afternoon when the light was sharpest. One day, I was cleaning. I glanced out my window to see a woman in white standing on the street, her face obscured, staring up at me. I blinked, and she was gone, leaving only a chill that lingered for hours. Another time, in the gloomy cellar where I took my bins, I saw a man in a hat standing by a door. I turned to greet him, thinking he was a neighbor, but the space was empty. Later, I learned of the Hat Man, a figure others had seen, always in shadow, always watching. Objects began to move. A loaf of bread leapt from one table, landing exactly where it started, as if mocking me. My friends laughed when I told them, their disbelief a knife in my gut. My relationships crumbled. One girlfriend fled after the bathroom door swung open on its own. No windows to blame, no draft to explain it. Another saw the same and left her rational mind unable to reconcile what she'd witnessed. The door, I told myself, closed due to a slanted floor, but it never opened that way on its own, only when I wasn't home. The TV in my flat, a cheap model with a finicky remote, began to act up. The volume would spike, loud enough to rattle my skull, even when the remote lay untouched on the kitchen table. It happened again the next day, the sound surging in bursts as if someone were jabbing the button. I tried to rationalize it. Faulty wiring, glitch. But the timing felt deliberate, malicious. One afternoon, Kareem and I visited a church, seeking solace and answers. He sat in the front row, his silhouette stark against the altar's glow. I stepped outside, restless, and sat on a wall facing the open door. A noise to my right drew my attention. A rustle, like footsteps on gravel. I glanced away for a moment, then back, only to see Kareem striding out of the church. "How did you get out so fast?" I asked, my voice tight. He frowned, saying he'd followed me when he heard me leave. But I didn't see him move. The church was empty, the pews silent. Yet I felt eyes on me, heavy and unyielding. The final straw came with the rosaries. One night, as Kareem left my flat, he called me downstairs. On the doorstep lay a wooden rosary, its beads glinting in the moonlight. He swore he'd nearly stepped on it, hadn't seen it until he was leaving. 2 weeks later, I found another on my doormat, identical, its presence a slight threat. I kept it, unable to throw it away, as if it held some power over me. For 2 years, I lived in a fog of dread. The manifestations ebbed and flowed, but never stopped. Shadows moved, objects shifted, and my mind frayed under the weight of it all. I was no longer myself, angry, exhausted, haunted by the sense that something was always watching, waiting. I swore off the Ouija board, divination, all of it. I turned to Christianity, clinging to its rituals like a lifeline. And slowly, the disturbances faded, but the fear remained, a cold knot in my chest. I made a mistake that night, placing my fingers on that board, inviting something I couldn't see, but could feel. It wasn't a game. It was a door, and we opened it. In the humid summer of 1993, my parents, 3 kids in tow, my older sister, my older brother, and me stood on the precipice of a new life. We were closing on a house in a cookie-cutter neighborhood in a good city, where every home was a single-story, 2-bedroom, 1-bath box, identical to their bland conformity. Except ours. Ours was a grotesque anomaly, a looming 2-story beast with 5 bedrooms, 3 baths, a beauty salon, and a workshop tacked on like afterthoughts by its previous owner, Mr. Geller. It squatted at the edge of the street, its shadow stretching too far, as if it knew something we didn't. During the closing, my mother, ever practical, asked Mr. Geller if someone had died in the house. His response slithered out, oily and sharp. "Why? You scared of ghosts?" His smile was too wide, his eyes too still. My parents laughed it off, but the air in the room thickened like the house itself was holding its breath. We moved in. The first week, I was supposed to take the last room on the left upstairs. It was spacious, with a slanted ceiling that seemed to lean inward, as if trying to whisper secrets. But from the moment I stepped inside, my skin raised in goosebumps. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing against my chest, and the shadows in the corners seemed to pulse. I couldn't sleep there. I refused. My brother and I ended up sharing the last room on the right, piling our toys and clothes into a space that felt marginally less alive. We settled in, or at least tried to. One evening, we decided to take a walk around the neighborhood, a grid of 5 roads where everyone knew everyone's business. We locked the house, turned off the lights, and shut the front door tight. The neighborhood was alive with the hum of summer. Kids on bikes, neighbors gossiping over fences. But as we looped back toward home, my stomach twisted. Our house stood in the distance, every window blazing with sickly yellow light. The front door gaped open like a wound. My mother made us stay 2 houses back, her voice tight as she whispered for us to wait. My father crept forward, his silhouette swallowed by the glow. He returned, face pale, saying the house was empty. The police came, searched, found nothing. No footprints, no signs of a break-in, just an open door and lights that shouldn't have been on. They filed a report and left, but I felt it in my bones. Something had invited itself in. Days later, we threw a housewarming party, desperate to weave ourselves into the neighborhood's fabric. Neighbors poured in, their chatter filling the house with a false warmth. But Bill, our next-door neighbor, lingered on the porch, his eyes darting toward the open door like it might swallow him. He finally came inside, perched on the couch, gripping his beer like a lifeline. My brother and I had a playroom off the living room. Sega, Nintendo, a hamster cage. I let my hamster, Gizmo, roll around in his ball, and he skittered into the living room. Bill froze, his foot draining of color as the ball bumped against his foot. "If that thing moves again, I'm gone," he muttered, his voice low and unsteady. Gizmo rolled once more, and Bill bolted, slamming the door behind him. He never set foot in our house again, sticking to the yard or the driveway. His eyes always flickering toward our windows, with something like dread. Weeks passed, and the house's pulse grew stronger. My mother struck up a conversation with Mimar, the older woman across the street, whose voice dropped to a hush as she spoke of the house's history. Mr. Geller's wife and daughter had died there, she said, both claimed by cancer. She said Geller, strange, her lips curling as she described the secret rooms he'd built, hidden behind bookshelves, sealed with screws, one under the stairs, another behind a wall in the upstairs bedroom, that were supposed to be mine. A fireman's axe and hose were tucked behind the stairwell walls. She said, like relics of some forgotten obsession. Mimar showed us both the remnant, a bookshelf in the computer room, screwed shut, but the hinges visible in the laundry room behind it. Upstairs, a faint crack in the sheetrock traced the outline of a sealed door where Geller kept a safe. The house was a labyrinth of secrets, and I felt its walls watching us. My mother, tired of my protests, forced my brother and me into the upstairs bedroom on the left. It was the biggest, she said, perfect for two boys, but the room felt wrong. The air was too still, the shadows too deep. We set up bunk beds, a TV, a stereo, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting. I slept on the top bunk, my brother below, and that's when the dreams began. Every night, I was trapped in the house, wandering its halls, my voice stolen. I saw my family, but I couldn't reach them. I tried to scream, to pick up the phone, but my body wouldn't obey. The dreams evolved, growing darker. I could move now, but I was hiding behind doors, under beds, behind furniture. Just watching a shadow move through the house. It was tall, featureless, a void that glided with purpose, brushing past my family, leaving fear in its wake. I'd wake up screaming, tears streaming down my face. My mother would always hold me at first, but soon she grew frustrated, telling me to stop having nightmares. As if I had a choice. My brother started sleepwalking, something he'd never done before. We'd find him in the morning, curled up in the hallway, the bathtub, the kitchen floor. The doctor had no answers, but Mimar gave us a cross to hang in our room. It helped, for a while. The dreams stopped, but the house didn't. One night, my parents hosted friends in the living room. Their laughter, a stark contrast to the house's oppressive silence. My mother sent me upstairs to fetch something from her room. As I climbed the stairs, The air grew colder, the shadows thicker. Then, a crash. Another. I ran downstairs to find the living room in chaos. Candles were flying off the fireplace shelf, one by one, shattering on the floor. My parents shouted. Guests screamed, some fleeing into the night. A few sat frozen, staring at the candles as they fell without cause. When it stopped, the room was a graveyard of wax and glass. No one spoke of it after. No one could. The house never rested. Strange feelings clung to every corner. Whispers in empty rooms, footsteps on stairs that led to no one. My little sisters were born in that house, their cries piercing the night. One had medical issues that lingered for years. One night, as my mother bathed the youngest, her eyes rolled back, her breath stopped, her tiny body turning purple. My mother's scream woke my father, who rushed in and shook her until she gasped and wailed. The doctors called it a fluke, but I saw the house's shadows in her vacant eyes. Another night, a friend slept over. We played Super Mario in my room. The house quiet for once. Then, the door creaked open, and heavy footsteps climbed the stairs. We froze, waiting for my father to appear, to tell us to go to bed. The steps stopped at the top. No one was there. We ran downstairs, heart pounding, to find my parents in the kitchen, oblivious. No one had gone upstairs. We begged to sleep in the living room, the glow of the TV our only shield against the dark. The final dream came on a stormy night, rain lashing the windows, lightning splitting the sky. I was hiding again, behind the living room couch, watching the shadow move. My baby sister wailed in her crib, my mother shushing her. My father stood in the bathroom, shaving, unaware of the shadow looming behind him. He raised his razor, slicing his cheek, blood dripping into the sink. I awoke, screaming, my voice raw. We moved soon after, and the dream stopped, as if the house had released me. Years later, I drove by the house. The new owner had gutted it, torn it down to the frame, rebuilt it as a single-story shell. He said he'd never felt anything strange, but his eyes flickered to the windows, just like Bill's. The house was different now, stripped of its secrets, but I wondered if it was truly gone, or if it was waiting, breathing for someone else to step inside. The summer I returned home after college was meant to be a quiet interlude, a fleeting pause before the grind of pharmacy school. I had an internship lined up, a few months to coast, to breathe. But the air in that small town was heavier than I remembered, thick with secrets that clung to the skin like damp rot. I should have known something was waiting for me, lurking just beyond the veil of nostalgia. Instead, I let myself be drawn back into her orbit, my old high school flame, Emily. What became as a flicker of memory quickly ignited into something raw, something dangerous. We were reckless, hiding our rekindled passion from her father, a man whose protective instincts bordered on feral. He wasn't cruel, but his presence loomed like a storm cloud, his shotgun a silent promise on the porch. Night after night, I played the fool's game. I parked my car on the desolate dirt road behind her house, where the town's light surrendered to an oppressive darkness. The path to her window was a gauntlet of shadows, each one seeming to pulse with a life of its own. I'd slipped through her bay window, heart pounding, and lie beside her for a few stolen hours. Her breath against my neck was a drug, numbing me to the creeping dread that waited outside. Before dawn, I'd vanish, retracing my steps through the suffocating black, praying her father's spotlight wouldn't catch me in its glare. But one night, the darkness turned on me. It was past 3 a.m. when I kissed Emily goodnight, her lips warm against the chill that clung to me. I slid out the window, my boots sinking into the soft earth, and began to trek back to the car. The night was a void, the kind that swallows sound and sight, leaving only the weight of your own heartbeat. Her father's spotlight cut a harsh beam across the backyard, illuminating the fence line where my car waited, shrouded in shadow. I moved carefully, sticking to the edges of that light, when something snagged my attention. A flicker of movement near my car. She was there, a figure, pale and gaunt, dressed in a tattered white nightgown that hung off of her frame like a shroud. She wasn't walking. She was gliding, her movement stiff and unnatural, circling my car in a slow, mechanical dance. With every loop, she paused to press her face against the windows. Her hands splayed across the glass, like she was searching for something inside. Her hair was a wild tangle, matted and chaotic, as if it had been clawed by unseen hands. I froze, my breath trapped in my chest, as her head turned, slowly, deliberately, toward me. Her eyes locked onto mine, and the world tilted. They weren't human eyes. They were glassy, unblinking, like twin voids that saw through me, peeling back my skin to expose the raw panic beneath. Her eyes were pulled into a tight, unnatural smile, trembling as if stitched into place by some crude hand. She didn't move at first, just stared, her face a pale mask under the faint glow of the spotlight. Then, with a deliberate crunch of gravel, she advanced. I stumbled backwards, my heel catching on a root, and fell into the dirt. The air was thick, suffocating, as if the night itself was conspiring to hold me down. She didn't run, didn't scream, just marched toward me. Her footsteps, unnaturally steady, each one a hammer blow against her nerves. Her mouth twisted, and a sound tore from her throat. A scream that wasn't human, a jagged guttural wail that clawed at the edges of my sanity. Her face contorted into a red, snarling mask, her eyes still locked onto mine, unyielding and unrelenting. My legs moved before my mind could catch up. I ran, not caring if her father heard, not caring if the whole damn town woke up. The world was a blur of shadow and terror, her footsteps thundering behind me, her deranged screams slicing through the night. I reached the back door, locked. The bay window was too far, too exposed. I sprinted around to the front, my lungs burning, and yanked at the handle. It gave way, and I stumbled into the glow of the hallway, where her father stood, calm as death itself. "Come in," he said, his voice low, almost amused. His smile was a blade, sharp and knowing, as he waved me inside. I tried to speak, to explain the thing chasing me, but he silenced me with a grin that made my skin crawl. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the dining room. The house was dark, the air heavy with the scent of stale beer and something sour. something wrong. We sat in silence, sipping warm beer from cans that felt too cold in my hands. Outside, the woman, Jane, he called her, screamed at the trees, her voice a relentless assault on the night. "She does that a lot," he said, his tone casual, as if discussing the weather. "Jane's been out there for years. No family, no help. Cops can't touch her. She's too clever for that. Snaps back just enough to keep them at bay." He leaned back, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "You caught her on a bad night." I didn't believe him. Not really. There was something in his voice, a faint undercurrent of satisfaction, as if he enjoyed my fear. He walked me to my car, his hand heavy on my shoulder, and told me to take the back route. "Keep the eyes open," he said, his smile never reaching his eyes. I did as he said, my hands trembling on the wheel. As I pulled onto the dirt road, I saw her again, standing under the pitch-black outline of her porch, arms limp, hair wild, her mouth moving in a silent scream aimed directly at me. Even with the engine roaring, I felt her gaze boring into me, stripping me bare. I floored it, taking the long way around, vowing never to pass her house again. Months later, I learned Jane had finally crossed a line, slapped a kid selling cookies, giving the police an excuse to drag her to the psychiatric ward. By some cruel twist of fate, I was interning in that very hospital. One night, tasked with refilling the Pyxis machine in a dark corner near the patient's rooms, I felt the air shift, grow heavier. On my way out, I glanced at the grainy surveillance monitor at the nurse's station. There she was, Jane, rocking in her room, her mouth moving endlessly, muttering words I couldn't hear, but could feel in my bones. I walked faster, the echo of her scream still ringing in my ears. Years later, before Emily's father moved away, he told me he'd once had a normal conversation with Jane. Said she seemed lucid, almost human. But I'll never forget the way his eyes found me in the dark. The way they stripped me of everything I thought I was. And deep down, I know she's still out there, waiting in the shadows, her scream ready to find me again. In 1999, the world teetered on the edge of something unspoken, a liminal space where the air itself felt charged with dread, as if the universe knew something we didn't. Y2K paranoia hung over us like a storm cloud, whispers of computers failing and skies falling, while Napster's endless downloads hummed through the night, tying up phone lines like a noose. Mall culture was still king, but it was rotting from the inside, its neon-lit corridors and food courts masking a decay no one could name. I was a junior in high school, drifting through those fluorescent-lit halls, chasing soft pretzels and orange Julius's. My world a haze of teenage defiance and restless energy. Hot Topic and Spencer's were my haunts, where I'd smirk at the edgy t-shirts and snicker at the novelty sex toys, tucked in the back. That's where I found it. A Ouija board, wedged between a beer bong and a garish blacklight poster. Its cheap cardboard box wrapped in plastic, gleaming under the store's dim lights like it had been waiting for me. It wasn't some ancient relic, no weathered wood or Gothic carvings. This was a mass-produced Hasbro toy, the kind you'd find next to Monopoly in a suburban Walmart, sold to clueless moms for sleepover giggles. But there was something wrong about it, something sterile and mocking, like a child's toy dipped in malice. I didn't believe in ghosts or demons. Horror movies were my thing, but I'd always scoff at the cheap jump scares, rolling my eyes at the flickering lights and overdone sound effects. My friends were the same, a pack of skeptics who'd sneak into abandoned houses off Route 9, spinning tales about a kid who burned to death in his attic, daring each other to spend the night. No one ever lasted long, but it was never about ghosts. Just the cold, the mold, the creeping discomfort of a place that didn't want you there. The Ouija board, though, it was perfect. A gag, a party trick to pull out when the beer ran dry and the conversation turned to static. I bought it with a crumpled 20, the cashier barely glancing up as he shoved it into a plastic bag. Just another dumb mall purchase to toss in my closet with old Fangoria magazines and half-melted candles from a basement seance that went nowhere. The first time we used it, it was a bust. Me, Timmy, and a few others crowded into Ryan's bedroom. 9-inch nails, droning low, the lights dimmed for effect. We placed our fingers on the planchette, asked the usual questions. Is anybody there? What's your name? How'd you die? And waited. It moved, sure, but it was obvious one of us was pushing it. We'd laugh, calling each other out and moving on to something else. But other times, it wasn't so easy to brush off. One night, at a different party, the board spelled out, "No night cap." We chuckled, but Laura, the girl across from me, went pale, her voice barely a whisper. "That's what my grandma said to my mom before she died." The room stilled, her words sinking into us like cold fingers. We played it up for drama, but her unease burrowed into me, a splinter I couldn't pull out. Another time, it sped out a string of numbers no one recognized. Timmy, ever the obsessive, wrote them down and later found out they matched an address 2 streets over. A house that sat empty, its windows dark, its yard overgrown. Most of the time, though, it was just a game, a way to make girls inch closer and guys puff up their chests, pretending they weren't spooked. It was fun. At least I thought it was. Then came Timmy's party, a rager that could only exist in '99, a chaotic blend of high school kids and college drop-ins, crammed into a house with no adults, fueled by cheap beer and stolen liquor. The air was thick with cigarette smoke and the acrid stink of bad weed. The music so loud it rattled your bones. Every room pulsed with its own madness, spilling drinks, shouting arguments over Limp Bizkit tracks. Couples disappearing into dark corners. As the night wore on, the night shifted. That restless in-between where people were either crashing or chasing the next high. That's when I pulled out the Ouija board. It was practically tradition by now. A reliable way to stir up laughs or nervous gasps. I waited for the perfect moment, when the stereo wars died down and the crowd was loose but not wasted, open to something weird. Around midnight, I made my move. "You guys want to try the Ouija board?" I called out, grinning. A few college kids perked up, drunk enough to bite, and Timmy, already slurring, clapped me on the back. "Hell yeah, Let's freak some people out. We cleared the dining room table, turning it into our seance stage. Someone killed most of the lights, leaving only a handful of candles that flickered like they were breathing. Another genius switched the TV to static, its low hiss filling the room like a chorus of whispers. 7 or 8 of us gathered around, the rest lurking at the edges, too drunk or too skeptical to join. I set the board down, the planchette squat and unassuming in the center. Timmy, me, a couple of college guys, and a girl named Angela, skeptical but intrigued, placed our fingers on it. "All right," I said, my voice carrying a cocky edge. "Let's see if we can piss off some ghosts." We started with the usual, "Is anybody there?" The planchette twitched, then slid to yes. Someone giggled, but the air tightened. A subtle shift no one acknowledged. Angela leaned in. "What's your name?" The planchette jerked, spelling out Dante in sharp, uneven movements. Timmy snorted. "What? Like the poet?" But a college kid across the table, his eyes darting, cut in. "That's not funny, man. That's an urban legend. This house, it used to be a social office in the 60s. Some guy named Dante, he killed himself here." The words landed like a stone in still water, rippling through us. My skin prickled, a cold sweat blooming at the base of my neck. Was he screwing with us, or was there something to it? Angela's voice wavered. "Dante, how did you die?" The planchette lurched, faster now, spelling ROPE. I forced a laugh. That's a little on the nose, don't you think? But no one laughed with me. The candles flickered, their flames dipping low, as if something had sucked the air from the room. A heavy-set guy in flannel, one of the college kids, shoved back from the table, his chair scraping the floor. "We should stop." Timmy frowned, his words slurring. "This is the best one yet, dude." Flannel Guy's voice was sharp, his face flushed. Whether from booze or fear, I couldn't tell. "You're messing with shit you don't understand. It's not the board. It's you. You open a door, you can't close it." The candles flickered again, and the planchette jerked violently under our fingers. Angela yelped, yanking her hands away as the board spelled out LEAVE. I smirked, trying to keep it light. That's cute. But Flannel Guy wasn't playing. His breath came fast, his knuckles white as he gripped the table. "We have to stop," he said, his voice rising, almost pleading. Before anyone could react, he shoved the table hard, sending the board crashing to the floor. The room froze. Then he was moving, storming into the kitchen. I thought he was just cooling off, maybe grabbing a drink, but then the back door slammed, and he was back, a kitchen knife gleaming in his hand, its blade catching the candlelight with a wicked smile. The room erupted in chaos. Screams, stammered protests. "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Hey, man!" someone shouted. He pointed the knife at the table, his hand shaking but his grip steady. "You don't know what you're doing," he hissed. "This comes with a price." Angela's voice cut through, trembling but firm. "Put the knife down." He ignored her, his eyes wild, his breath ragged. "This demon shit's not a joke. You think you're playing a game? You're letting something in." The static from the TV grew louder, a buzzing snarl that seemed to pulse with his words. No one moved. Then, in one soft motion, he lunged, driving the knife through the Ouija board, splitting it clean through. The planchette skittered across the floor, and the blade lodged deep into the table beneath. Timmy shot up, cursing about his parents' dining table. Someone screamed, and the spell broke. A few guys rushed Flannel Guy. Derek, someone called him, wrestling the knife from his hands. He thrashed, spitting curses, his eyes burning with something beyond drunken rage. "Don't understand," he screamed, as we shoved him toward the door. "You let something in." We forced him outside, slamming the door behind him. The house fell silent, save for the TV's static and the candle's faint cackle. The Ouija board lay broken. The word "leave" seared into my mind like a brand. Then, from upstairs somewhere, a low groan, wood creaking under weight, slow and deliberate. The front door was locked, but it sounded like footsteps, heavy and unhurried, pacing the floor above. No one spoke. The air thickened, heavy as a held breath, the kind that comes before a storm breaks. Angela coughed, shattering the silence, and Timmy barked a nervous laugh. Jesus Christ, what a psycho. The college kid who'd mentioned Dante, Mike, I think, rubbed his temples. That was Derek. He's intense. Drinks a lot, gets weird about religious stuff. I didn't think he'd go that far. He gestured to the knife still buried in the table. The party limped on, but the mood was dead. People drifted away, mumbling excuses, while others cranked the music to drown out the unease. Angela refused to touch the board. "You're throwing that thing away," she muttered before leaving. I nodded, prying the knife free and lifting the broken board. That's when I noticed it. The blade had sliced clean through the plastic and into the table, but the wood beneath was untouched. Not a scratch. It should have been impossible. A knife that sharp, driven with that force, should have left a mark. My stomach twisted, but I shoved the board into the kitchen trash and tried to shake it off. The night wound down, people passing out or stumbling home. I collapsed into a recliner, exhaustion pulling me under. But the house wouldn't let me rest. Creaks echoed from the upstairs, slow and rhythmic, like someone pacing in the dark. At one point, I swore I heard a window slide open, then shut with a soft thud. I told myself it was nothing. The house settling, the wind, anything but what my gut was screaming. In the early hours, I woke to another creak, my head pounding from the cheap beer and no sleep. The room was dark, the TV finally off, but the house felt wrong, like it was holding its breath. My eyes drifted to the kitchen trash. The Ouija board wasn't inside it anymore. It sat on the floor beside it, split down the middle. Its letters faded, as if decades had worn it down in a single night. It looked ancient, like something dredged up the forgotten attic, not the glossy toy I'd bought at Spencer's. My skin crawled, a cold sweat prickling my neck. Maybe someone knocked it out, making room for more cans. Maybe it was a prank. But as I stared, the air grew heavier, the shadows sharper, like the room was watching me back. I didn't wake Timmy. I didn't tell anyone. I grabbed the board, its edges rough and splintered, and stumbled outside to the dumpster across the street. I hurled it in, the lid slamming shut with a hollow clang. I went home, locked my door, and tried to bury the memory. We stopped the Ouija parties after that. No one mentioned the board again, as if we'd all agreed to forget it. But sometimes, late at night, I'd hear creaks in my own house. Slow, deliberate, like footsteps pacing just out of sight. I'd tell myself it was nothing, just the house settling. But deep down I knew something had followed me home. And that, dear listeners, brings a close to these disturbing assortment stories. I would like to take a moment and acknowledge the rest of the membership of BackToAshes. Thank you all so much for your continuous and dedicated support. And as I've always said, without you, I wouldn't have a voice and this channel would not exist. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you are new to the channel and like how I narrate and like the style of this channel, please give this video a thumbs up, leave a comment, and if you'd like to join the BackToAshes family, please hit subscribe and make sure your notification bell is set to all so you know the next time that I upload a video. If you are sleeping, I hope Slumberland is treating you comfortably. If you are awake, I hope you've enjoyed these selections. Until next time, please stay vigilant out there and take good care of yourselves. I'll be reading to you soon. Have yourselves a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening. Peace, love, and light to you all.